All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your question, go ahead and post it. It's either going to be below the video there, or it's going to be to the right of the video. If you're on a mobile device, it's going to be below the video. So, real quickly, if you're first time in the office hours and you posted a question, um, the way that I do it is I start with the questions that were posted up to an hour before the office hours. So, if you posted your question more than an hour ago, before 8 a.m. Eastern time, then go ahead and just copy and paste and re-put your question there. The reason why I do that is I just want to make sure that I'm answering questions for those who are here to see them get answered. Because a lot of times what happens that people will just mosey into this page, they'll ask a question not during office hours, and then they'll just leave because they don't really understand exactly how it works. So no worries if you're in that situation, just copy and paste your question. But if it was answered up more than, or if it was asked less than an hour ago, I'll be able to answer it here. So I'm going to be starting with John Z. He posted his question 13 minutes ago. There's no questions before that. There are, but they were posted yesterday, last night, and if we run out of questions, I may go back to those and answer those. But it looks like we have a couple questions here. So John Z says, do the shoulders open naturally as the hips turn into impact, or do you make an attempt to keep them square? So that's a good question. So as with anything that I get asked stuff all the time, do you actively do this? Do you consciously do this? Do you naturally do this? And the answer to the question is almost always, it depends, right? So basically, you have to look on video, and if you are not doing what you're trying to do, then it's not an unconscious movement for you, right? It means that if you want to move your body in that way, you're going to have to consciously do it, right? So, and then eventually, once you start to get more comfortable with that movement, it will become unconscious. But if you're trying to get a certain movement and you're not doing it, then you're going to have to consciously do it. Think about it this way. If you were coming into contact and your face was wide open, right? You were hitting the ball way off to the right. That's kind of just the natural feeling that you had through contact. Well, you're going to need to consciously close that face more as you go through contact to get that to square up. It's no different with any other movement that you're trying to do. Now, one thing to understand here is that you're basically you got to understand exactly why the shoulders need to be square to open or things like that to really because the shoulders don't necessarily need to be square. They don't need to be closed off. They don't need to be open. It's all about what's going on at contact and whatever shoulder positions allow you to be in that position at contact. Typically, what you're going to see with most of your better ball strikers, you're going to see the shoulders be slightly open. So something around 10 degrees open. But some players like Rory McIlroy, he's much more open with his shoulders. Definitely plays some pretty decent golf. We typically not going to see players with their shoulders very closed. So by that, I mean their shoulders are very, very closed off when they come into contact. It's just hard to get. You can't get that separation from your upper body and your lower body as much. It's just hard to get that. So typically, you know, when you come into contact, your average tour player is going to have their hips about 40 to 50 degrees open, and they're going to have their shoulders, 10 to 12 degrees open, somewhere in there. So if your shoulders are very, very closed off, it's going to be hard to get your hips to open at impact and be able to get that club to release out in front. So to a certain extent, yes, your shoulders, if your body is opening up, your shoulders are, if they're trailing behind, if you're sequencing properly, they are naturally going to get in that position. But at the same time, it may be a conscious thing that you have to do if you're not doing that, because that doesn't mean just because you open your hips. A lot of times what happens with people is that we'll open our hips and our shoulders go with it, right? So we're not getting into this side bend as we're coming into contact to get the shoulders to not open up as we're coming into contact. So as with anything, if you're not naturally doing something and you want to do it, you're going to have to consciously do that thing or actively do that thing until basically it becomes second nature, right? So that goes with any technique that you're doing in golf. If you think about the stable fluid spine, if your spine angle is like this, and that's what you naturally do right now, it's not just going to happen magically on its own to get to where you need to be. You're going to need to consciously make an effort to get into the proper position. All right. So John A says GPS. So not sure if he had a question about GPS or what, but John A, if you got a question about GPS, feel free to post it on there. All right. So Ben S says, hi Q. As a follow from yesterday, I'm having trouble flattening out the irons on the downswing, especially meeting that checkpoint of being parallel with the right arm about halfway down. Any suggestion on how to work on this? My swing is slightly steep and above the elbow plane. I verify this on the V1 app. So I would really be focusing on, kind of your elbow motions and your arm motions. So basically, if you're someone who's coming down steep, most likely it's because of this elbow, right? So this trail elbow is getting out away from the body, right? And there's also this lead elbow is going to be pointing more down to the ground. So we need to get this feeling of the elbows pointing more that way. And the other thing is that one thing you have to understand is that when you're changing anything that's happening in the downswing, it's not going to be a go out to the range, fix it just like that, and you're going to be good to go. It's going to take some time and some repetition. You got to start out going really, really slow, pause at key checkpoints, exaggerate as much as possible, and then build up the speed from there. That's what you got to do. There's a process that's involved there. So keep that in mind as well. So what I'd recommend doing is I would go out, really, really focus on getting this. I would try to exaggerate it as much as possible. So I would go up to the top of the swing, I would come down, and I would try to get this trail elbow way underneath the lead elbow. The lead elbow is going to be pointing way out. The shaft's going to be parallel to the ground. Now this isn't a reality of what's going on. This is what I would call fault, feel, real, right? So your fault is that you're coming down steep, right? The problem with this is that when you come down steep, you've got to make a compensation in the downswing to get that club to come down on plane, or you're just going to come down over the top. So you're either going to go like that, or you're going to stand up to get the club back on plane, and you're going to flip. So neither one of those are good. You don't want to chop down and cut across the ball. It's going to be very, very difficult to be consistent when you do that. You don't want to stand up. And now you can hit good shots when you do this. It's just difficult to be consistent because you're going to be flipping. You're going to hit a lot of chunk shots and things like that. So getting that club, now the club's going to be on plane, but the problem is, or it may even drop too much under plane. There's all kinds of issues that can come from that. So we want to get this club nice and shallowed out. So the fault is this, coming down steep. And we know the issues that can come with that. The feel is this, right? The feel is getting the club to be parallel to the ground at this point in the swing. So we're here, and then I would just try to flatten that thing and see what my body is doing to make that happen. My hands are turning. My forearms are turning like this, like I'm turning the doorknob to the right. My elbow is coming down. My trail elbow is coming down and getting lower than the lead elbow. And my lead elbow is pointing like it's parallel to the ground as well, right? So that's all getting that club to flatten out there at that position. The reality, so that's the fault. Here's the feel, and then here's the real. We want that club to be coming down right in this area in a good position, right? So this is the reality. This is the feel. So what I'd recommend doing is I would do a lot of slow motion, pausing practice swings where you're pausing at that point. So you're going up to the top, nice and slow. You're coming down, you're flattening that out, and then you're coming down into impact, nice and slow. Get comfortable with those motions and be mindful of what your body is doing to make that happen. As you get more and more comfortable with that, now let's do it without a pause. Let's do a nice fluid practice swing where we're going up to the top. We're nice and we're not pausing. We're going like this. We're coming down and go really nice and slow with it. I'm talking really slow. It's hard for people to do this, but this is how you think about anything that you learn how to do. You always start out doing it slow, right? If you're learning to play a musical instrument, you wouldn't just, like if you were learning to play the guitar, you wouldn't just start out playing Stairway to Heaven, right? You would be just learning the notes and then slowly figuring out how to go from one note to the next, and then reading music and putting that together. There's a process there. So as anything that you do really want to do really fast, you have to learn it slow first and then build up the speed to do it fast. So that's what I recommend. Start building up the speed. And once you do that, you're going to get more comfortable with it. So a lot of times I actually recommend, whenever you're working on movements, to not go to the range and work on it. Go to the range and work on your ball striking. That's completely fine. But it's a lot easier, and it saves you a lot more money if you stay at home and work on it. Take a crumpled up piece of paper. It resembles the same size as a golf ball, and use that. Just let it kind of get in the way. You're not trying to hit it or try to hit it hard or anything, because you're swinging slow. You're just coming through. You're being mindful of impact when you're doing that, and you're just going nice and slow. And then you're building up the speed until essentially you get to where you're at full speed with it. Once you're at full speed and you're nailing the movement, and you're seeing, okay, I'm coming through contact pretty well. I'm hitting that piece of paper in the center of the face. I'm coming down and striking that piece of paper first. I'm not chunking it. I'm not hitting way behind it. I'm swinging on plane. Like all my impact conditions are good. I'm nailing the movement. Now let's try to do this with a golf ball. As you can understand, there's a process there. But I tell you what, it may seem like that's going to take forever. But honestly, if you work on this for 15, 30 minutes a day at home, going to the range, that's, maybe it's 20 minutes to the driving range. You're talking 40 minutes round trip. Then, that's a big time chunk that you have to do that. It's really difficult to do that every single day. But everyone at home can take 15, 30 minutes a day and do these slow motion reps. You're going to get a lot more out of it and a lot more practice in. It's going to be a lot easier for you to do that. I'd much rather you practice this kind of thing for 15, 30 minutes a day, rather than you go out one day and practice for a 3-hour chunk one day a week. You're going to build those neural pathways if you do it every single day. So that's what I recommend doing. You're not having trouble with it, really. You're just haven't gone through the process, is what it sounds like. So go through the process, do the slow motion reps, and I think you'll be surprised. It may not seem like you make a ton of progress in one day, but if you stick with it, and do it 15, 30 minutes a day, I think you'll be surprised at how much progress you can make in a couple weeks with not a ton of time. If it's 15 minutes a day for 2 weeks, that's basically, a few hours. So if you do that, I think you'll make a ton of progress. All right. So Jeffrey T said, instead of turning the face down in the downswing, can you take a stronger grip? So this is a question I get all the time. It will make it easier, but you'll still have to turn the face, because here's what people are doing when they're flipping. When people are flipping, they're pushing through with that trail hand. So this trail hand's coming through. So if I just take a stronger grip, so here it would be kind of a neutral grip. If I'm pushing through, I'm kind of like that. So now allow forward shaft lean. If I take a stronger grip and I push through, I'm still flipping through contact. So you just have to, it's just less you have to do to square up the face. It's not going to fix the issue of the trail hand doing this. It's not going to fix the issue of your sequencing, right? It may make it easier and something you can try, but it's not going to fix it. So it's not going to be the end all be all to, well, I don't have to do anything. I just need to take the stronger grip and I'm going to get forward shaft lean. I wish it worked that way. I wish it was that easy. But most of the time when people take a stronger grip, whenever they're working on trying to get forward shaft lean, they just start hitting snap hooks that start to the left, because they're just closing the face is all they're doing. They're doing the same thing they were doing with their hands before. It's just that they've twisted their hands this way, and now they're just turning, they're just going through and closing the face through contact. So that's typically what happens. So you still need to do the motions. You still need to get this trail wrist going in extension here as you're coming into contact. You still need to do that. So it can make it easier, and it's something you can try, but it's not just going to fix it. You still have to bend that trail wrist back. If you look at every tour player, they're all in this kind of position at contact, where that wrist is bent back, no matter how strong. So that'd be a strong grip. If you look from here, you can see my wrist is bent back. It's just from a different angle, because because I have a stronger grip. So most people are flipping are doing this through contact. It's that motion. So what we need is to get this kind of motion where we feel like we're pushing the grip or pushing that club into the ground. That's the kind of motion that you want to have when you're doing that. And that's whether you have a strong grip or a weak grip when you're working on this. So it can help, but it's not going to be, it's not, I wouldn't call it a game changer by any means. So Rick F says, good morning. My problem is that while swinging my irons, I lose spine angle and I have my head drop 8 inches from setup to impact. Does not happen with a driver. Your thoughts? Good morning. My problem is that while swinging my irons, I lose spine angle and my head drop by 8 inches from setup to impact. It's hard to say exactly, Rick, if that's necessarily a bad thing. 8 inches is a lot. It's probably not that much. And you would have to be really standing very upright and be really getting down very low to make that happen. Like I said, it's hard to say without seeing your swing. But your average tour player is dropping anywhere from 4 to 6 inches typically from address to downswing. And that's because they're getting forward shaft lean. So here's our address position, right? We're like this, and that impact looks something like that. So typically your average tour player is getting 4 to 6 inches lower. If you look at a Justin Thomas, he's getting about 6 inches lower from where he was at address. Some players aren't getting as low, but pretty much all players are dropping 4 to 6 inches at impact. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing. What you're probably doing is you're probably standing up at the top of the swing and then really having to drop down into impact. So if that's the case, I'd really work on getting these shoulders to be steeper as you go up to the top, because you can play fine golf this way. It's just hard to be consistent, right? So if I'm going like this and then really, really having to drop down in the downswing, it's just difficult to be consistent when you do that. Doesn't mean you can't play good golf. It just means it's difficult to be consistent. So if that is the case for you, what you can try to see if it can make you a little bit more consistent, make your ball striking a little bit better, is I would try this shoulder to shoulder drill. Put the club across your shoulders here, and I would turn up to the top, and I'd try to keep this angle down. Try to keep this angle down, because when you stand up in the backswing, what's happening with your shoulders? They're leveling out, right? So try to keep that angle down, and then the downswing, we're also going to have that angle down as we're coming through. So work on the easiest way to kind of think about it is, this is actually from Ben Hogan's 5 lesson book, is if you think about a plane of glass that starts at the golf ball, right? So if I'm in my address position here, I've got a plane of glass that starts at the golf ball here, and it goes up, and it's sitting on top of my shoulders, and my head is going through a hole in that plane of glass. And that's basically the plane that you want to feel like your shoulders are on. It's not the reality. Your shoulders aren't that steep, but it's a good feeling to have to keep these shoulders on a nice steep plane or a consistent plane. Because what most people are doing in their swing is they're either starting out too low and then they're going like this, or they just go like this. Not most people aren't staying in their posture very, very, very well. So I would look at that, try to have that feeling, work on that shoulder to shoulder drill. We actually have a video on the website of the shoulder to shoulder drill if you want to check it out. All you have to do is search 3 words, shoulder to shoulder. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little search box there. You can type search shoulder to shoulder right there. Or if you're on a mobile device, click the icon in the upper right-hand corner. That's 3 horizontal lines. That will expand a menu. If you scroll down to the bottom of that menu, you'll find that search box there. Click that search box and search shoulder to shoulder if you want to work on that drill. All right. So Rod P says, when the club face is turned down, hands forward, doesn't that negate bounce? Well, it does a little bit. I mean, your bounce is releasing, so the bounce is coming into play as the club is gliding through the turf. So it's not negating the bounce necessarily. And depending on the club, it will more than others. Like a wedge has more bounce, right? So here's a 3 iron. This is a 3-iron. You can see the bounce on that, not very much at all. And then here's a 50-degree wedge, which doesn't have a ton of bounce, but it has some bounce there. So if I'm coming into contact and I have some forward shaft lead, you can see there's not really any bounce in play there. But as I go through contact, so here I'm at contact, I'm contacting the ball. Now I'm entering the turf. Now you can see the bounce is coming into more play. And as I'm releasing the club and coming up out of the turf, the bounce is helping me to come up out of there. So it's not negating the bounce. And really with a full swing shot, you're not looking to use the really bounce anyway. That's the reason why irons really don't have much bounce on them at all, is because of that. So you don't really need bounce on those shots. Where you need bounce are with wedge shots for the most part, especially bunker shots. That's where you really, really need the bounce is on those shots, because you need the club to glide through the sand. With certain wedge shots, like a pitch shot or something like that, a lot of times you're using the bounce on those shots to not dig into the turf. But for the most part, with forward shaft lean, especially if you're hitting a pitch shot, a lot of times you're opening the face as well, which adds more bounce. So even if you have forward shaft lean with an open face, there's still bounce right there on the wedge typically. So, but with your typical iron shot, for the most part, you're not going to be using the bounce until basically the club's in the divot somewhere, and then that helps it come up out of the divot. All right, let's keep on going. So Tyler T says, I've got some trouble hitting the sweet spot on my driver after a range day. My heel is littered with ball debris marks, especially the upper heel. Any drills or tips for me? Tyler, this may seem trivial, but what I'd actually recommend doing is intentionally try to strike the ball at the toe of the club. Now, what you can do is this is a foot powder spray. This is the Walgreens brand foot powder spray. This works fine. I've used it, although it hasn't been working the last couple days. Let's see if we can get some to work on here. For some reason, it's not wanting to come out. I can feel there's plenty in there. It's just not. There it comes. So I used to think this was good, but now it's not. Yeah, it's just coming out in small bits. But anyway, the brand that we found that works the best, I bought that because they didn't have the brand at Walgreens, or they were out of it. But basically, it's the Dr. Scholl's Odor X. It's a yellow can. That's the one that comes out really well, really, really white. But you can kind of see on the face here, I tried to spray it on, but it was blotchy. But basically, what you do is you spray this on the face, and then when you hit the ball, it'll leave a mark on the face there where you struck it. It's very, very easy to see. So I would use something like that to see where you're striking on the face. If you're hitting a lot of balls over here, what I would do is I would just try to hit the balls over here. If you're hitting them high on the heel, I try to hit them low on the toe, right? Hit the opposite, right? So intentionally try to strike. Right now, you're trying to strike it in the center of the face. Well, first, let's say this, because I've found that I have had some students that, I've told this to, and they're really, really confused because they weren't even trying to strike it in the center of the face to begin with. So if you're not trying to strike it in the center of the face, if you're just trying to hit the ball, then really focus on trying to hit it in the center of the face. Visualize that center face contact. Really, really try to come in and strike that ball in the center of the face. Intentionally do that. See if that moves it to the center of the face. All right. If it doesn't, if you're still striking it, if you're already trying to hit it in the center and you're striking it over here, then all you got to do is adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. Because right now, you're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face, but the reality of what's going on is that you're hitting it up here in the upper heel. So what we need to do is we need to feel like we are trying to hit it here in the low toe area, and that will more than likely move the strike closer to the center of the face. So again, here's your fault. Your fault is here, striking the ball up here. The feel is that you're going to strike it down here. The reality is that hopefully you get it in the center of the face. And you know what? If you still strike it up here, then you're not exaggerating it enough. You may need to feel like you're coming in and missing the golf ball. That's how much you may need to exaggerate it. So you need to change your feel to get the desired result that you want. What will likely happen is you'll likely strike it more in the center of the face. Now, if you actually do strike it low on the toe, that's great. That means that you've made change. You've just exaggerated it too much. I would just ease off of that feeling just a little bit to get that strike more in the center of the face. Then I would just try to get a few in the center of the face. And once you do that, once you've gotten to where you've essentially calibrated yourself, what I would do at that point is I would try to strike it on different parts of the face. So I'd go all over the place. I would go, okay, well, now I'm going to actually try to get that strike in the toe. Instead of trying, you may need to feel like you're hitting it way out here to get that strike way out in the toe. So try to hit in the toe. Once you're successful there, then try to hit it in the heel. Once you're successful there, try to hit it in the center of the face. I'd really try to alternate those strikes. And what that's going to do is that's going to give you an overall better feeling for the center of the face. All right. So that's what I'd recommend doing. The other thing that often causes these heel strikes is swinging too much into out. Right. So when we swing too much into out, we have this club working too much from the inside. This club head is working across the ball this way. So that hosel is working toward the golf ball. So look at your club plane and see what's going on, because a lot of times you may be swinging really into out, but you're hitting it off the heel and you're just hitting kind of weak pulls or weak fades or things like that. Whereas if you were hitting it in the center of the face, you'd probably be hitting some hooks. So it's kind of giving you this false sense that you're hitting it straight, but weak shots. But the reality is that if you were hitting it in the center of the face, they would be hooks, right? So get those strikes more in the center of the face. See what the ball flight's doing. Look at your swing on video. See if you're swinging too much into out. If you are swinging too much into out, again, this is a fault feel real thing. If you're swinging too much into out, I would actually feel like you're swinging out over the top. And the reality is that you'll hopefully be swinging more on plane. And then you just continue to adjust your feel to get that plane where you want it to be. All right. So James M says, Q went out the first time and got a reading on my PRGR and it was very low. I lost some of my speed. Tried to swing hard as I could. Is there a drill where I can get my speed back? I'd be working through the 20-minute distance fix. If you're looking for speed, work through the 20-minute distance fix. And I wouldn't just work through it one time. If you work through it once and you still want speed, I would just try to build on what you did the first time that you went through it. All right. So work through that 20-minute. I would also make sure that you're setting up the device properly. You're setting it up at the same level. Because that's very, very important. You can't set it up if you're on a mat and you're hitting off of a mat and then you set the PRGR down behind the mat at a lower level, then it's going to give you the reading's probably not going to be right. So bring a 2x4 with you, a little block 2x4 that's typically going to be about the same width. 2x4 is a 1.5 inch thick. It's going to put it pretty darn close to the same level as the mat. I think usually mats are about 1.5 inches thick or something like that. So that's what I'd recommend. Bring a little 2x4 block with you, something like that. Set the PRGR on it. Bring a book with you. Bring something. The PRGR box is you could use that and set it on that. There's all kinds of things that you can use to get it at the same level. So that's what I'd be doing. And then also make sure that it's at about a club length behind it. So about a club length behind it. So most people, their driver is going to be about 4 feet end to end, something like that. So if you use the driver, put the driver right behind the golf ball, put your PRGR right here. That's going to put you at basically the perfect distance away. If you're too close or too far away, it may be reading, maybe giving you a weird reading. So one, I'd make sure that you're setting it up correctly. And then two, if you've lost some of your speed, then I would just continue to go through the 20-minute distance fix. Try to build on what you did before. Because a lot of times, you go through the 20-minute distance fix, you go through the drills, and you get the speed. That's just telling you when you're going through the program, it's just telling you what you need to do or what's giving you most speed, right? So maybe you work on the catapult drill and you find, okay, heel coming off the ground, big shoulder turn, belt buckle turning away, shirt buttons turning away, hands back, whatever it might be in the catapult drill, whatever that feeling is in the catapult drill, you're finding, okay, that's what's giving me more speed. But when you move on to the next one, typically that's not going to be ingrained. Folks, I really wish that it worked out that that the pieces, things that you work on, it's just one range session and you're just going to be nailing it just like that. It just doesn't work that way. You got to think, to build a habit, it takes some time, right? And you can never get rid of old habits. You can only create new habits that overcome the old ones, right? So if you had a habit before of getting a short shoulder turn, and then you worked on the catapult drill, for one range session, and you started getting a bigger shoulder turn, and and you start hitting the ball further. When you went on to the next thing, you're probably not doing that shoulder turn anymore because it's not something that's fully ingrained. So what I'd recommend doing is, I would think, if you've gone through the 20-minute distance fix already, I would either go through it again and try to build on what you did and just keep on going through it and keep trying to build it and ingrain it as you go. Or I would choose the pieces that gave you the biggest gains. So let's say the catapult drill gave you the biggest gains. That's the power turn. So I would be doing that drill all the time to make that second nature, to make it so that it's you don't even have to think about it. It just happens. All right. So that's what I'd recommend doing. If it was the half swing or half back swing full follow through drill, then I'd be doing that. To get to where that feels second nature. So that's really what it comes down to. I really wish it worked out to where you could just work on something one time and you do it forever, but it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, you're always going to kind of go back to what you were doing before, unless you take the time to make that your new habit. And it just takes some time and some repetition to do that. All right. So Patrick Y says, on the backswing, my head moves slightly towards right leg. I am able to keep my club face square through the move. I move my head back. I may be coming out of my spine angle as I move my head. What should I focus on, squaring the club face or keeping my head from moving back? Squaring the club face is by far the most important thing. What you just said. The head can move around a little bit. Go look at tour players. What you're going to see, most of them move off the golf ball a little bit. One is because as their shoulders are turning, their head will turn a little bit. And two, as they're loading up initially, a lot of times as they get that little load up in the beginning, their head will move off a little bit. So you got to look at everything that you do in your technique. It has to be to improve what's going on at impact. It has to be. So if you're coming into contact and your face is open, but your head is perfect, that's not good. You want to make sure, if your head's moving around, if your head's like this and you're coming in and you're squaring up the face, I'd much rather you be doing that. It only matters what happens at impact. So really, really focus on that. That your head moving off the ball a little bit, that's completely fine. As long as you're not ending up in this kind of area. If you're not kind of like this is a bad area to be in. It's going to be hard to hit the ball from here, right? Because I'm going to end up probably swinging into out. My trail shoulder is just going to be way too close or way too far behind the golf ball when I'm coming in. I'm going to end up probably chunking it, or if I miss the ground, I'm probably going to end up topping it. It's going to be hard for me to get a good weight shift to my lead side. So if you move too much off the ball like this and your spine angle is way too bent over like this, that can spell issues. But hey, if you move off the golf ball a little bit as you're going up to the top and you're in this kind of position, you're in a great, powerful position right there. So I'll just make sure your hips aren't sliding a ton. It's not like this. That's not where you want to be. You want to be turning the hips. If the hips go a little bit, that's fine, but they need to be turning as you're going up to the top of the swing. It's just hard to say, Patrick, without seeing your swing, but I would say the most important thing is going to be your club face, squaring that up. That's the most important thing. The face is king. Where this ball starts is one of the most important things. Where you strike it in the face, again, another really, really important thing. Your club path, the way this club is working down into the golf ball, very, very important thing. And lastly, how this club is coming down and then working up. So basically the low point of this club, another very, very important thing. So those are all really the most important things as far as your impact conditions. The way that you move your body has to cater to those things, right? So when we talk about the Top Speed Golf system, these are all the things that allow you to move your body in a way that's going to make those things a lot easier. If I get way too much spine tilt away, or if I get to where I'm leaning forward, that's going to cause a lot of issues with my face contact, because when your body's moving around everywhere, it's going to have to make compensations. And when your eyes are moving around, it's going to be difficult to, when the eyes are moving around a lot. They can move around a little bit. They're going to move. If you look at tour players, their eyes are moving around a lot. But if we're like this, or if we're like this and then falling away, things like that, it's going to be difficult to strike that ball in the center of the face. Your ground contact is going to be, that low point is going to be hard to control, because if you're like this and then like this, it's going to be difficult to get to control that low point. It's going to be moving around all over the place. Your club path, right? So if I'm leaning toward the target at the top, I'm going to tend to want to come over the top in the downswing. If I'm leaning too far away, I'm going to tend to swing too much from the inside. If I'm nice and stable as I go up to the top, that's going to put me in a great position to swing that club on plane in the downswing. So that's a big part of it, right? So the top speed golf system, especially the stable fluid spine, really, really important to get those pieces where you want them to be. Once you get those pieces of the top speed golf system, those impact conditions are going to be a lot better. So that's what I would recommend working on. And don't worry about your head moving just a little bit, right? That's not a problem. A lot of times you go look at tour players swing, you're going to see a lot of them that move off of the golf ball a little bit initially in the backswing. Typically what you're going to see as far as head movement from a tour player or from good ball strikers is you'll either see the head not move really much at all in the backswing as far as lateral movement. You'll see the head move back and down. It's typically what you'll see. As they go up to the top of the swing, it's going to move back and down. So a little bit this way, typically. More down than back, typically, but down and back. And then in the start of the downswing, you'll see it's going to move forward and down even more. And then about when they get about halfway down, you're going to see that head doesn't really move a lot as they come into contact, right? They're just turning around their body. Now, some tour players like a Rory McIlroy, you'll see at impact, they'll come up just a little tiny bit, just a tiny small amount. You'll see that head move up. And then after impact, you'll see they'll come all the way up into that full finished position. So the head is moving around. This notion that the head does not move is completely false. It does move around. It's just, it just doesn't look like it a lot of times because it's not herky-jerky everywhere all over the place. It's because it moves down, down, and then up. That's basically what you're seeing. So down and back, down and forward, and then up after impact is typically what you're going to see. And during the swings, they look like they're effortless and there's lots of power there. And that's why we don't think, okay, it doesn't move around a lot. But go look at Jack Nicklaus's swing. His head moved around everywhere. It moved off the ball and back, forward and toward the ball, and then after contact came all the way up, moved all over the place. And he played some pretty good golf. So don't be too worried about the head. You know, it just can't be excessive. It can't be way over here and then way over here. And then, you know, if you try to keep your head completely still, you're going to be restricting yourself, and you're also most likely going to flip. You know, you're probably going to come into contact and flip the club when you're coming in. If you're not, because that means that you're not getting to your lead side. You're not using your legs to rotate. If you keep your head in the same spot the entire swing, then you're really just throwing your arms at the golf ball. More than likely, you may be keeping your head still on the backswing, but in the downswing, you're going to do this because if you're just using your arms, you're just going to throw your arms and flip at it. So things to think about when you're working on your swing. I think too many people get too obsessed with their head moving around or not moving around. All right, so next question here. Luke F. says, question on a TSG progression. I'm new to TSG and I'm halfway through the Stable Fluid Spine series. Is there a specific progression to go through in the 5 fundamentals? I use spine first, power turn next, lag. Knowing my swing, I think the move would be very beneficial too, but don't know the best order to use. Appreciate your thoughts. So that's a good question. So what you want to do is go in the order in which it's in. And if you're already nailing, because you may be nailing pieces already in the swing, right? So what I'd recommend doing is get familiar with what the top speed golf system is. So the top speed golf system, as far as stable fluid spine, we want to be nice and angled away at address. stable up at the top, and then more angled away and opening as we're coming into contact. So it's 6 to 8 degrees at address, in that 18, 25 degree range angled away. If we're looking at the center of our hips, center of our spine, it's going to look something like that as we're coming into contact. Power turn, we want to get at least 90 degrees. Lag, we want to be at least, we just don't want to be casting. That's the main thing. If you're casting the club, if you're doing this from the very beginning, you're definitely going to want to work through the lag course. If you're seeing that this angle is from the top of the swing to here, is basically staying the same, you're in good shape. You don't need to work on really tightening this up. You're in fine. Ideally, we would have a little bit of tightening of that. That's going to give you a little bit more power typically, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a ton of power if you don't get a ton of lag. If you look at Dustin Johnson, right? Dustin Johnson, basically, he's at the top of the swing here. He's not sharpening that angle as he's coming down. It's basically staying the same, and then it starts to release from here. We just want to get to lead arm parallel to the ground, where this club is not already releasing. If you're doing that, then I would skip the lag course. You're good to go. You don't really need to work on it. But if you're seeing that you're casting this club from the very, very beginning, this trail hand is pushing out from the very, very start of the swing, you're going to want to work on the lag course. Your compression line, right? So our compression line, we want the body to be opening up. We want the hips to be opening up about 45 degrees. We want to make sure that our ankle, our lead hip, and our lead shoulder are all in a nice straight line, slightly angled away from the target. So if you look at your swing and you see your hips are bumped out, you see that your hips are not rotated at all, you see that you're maybe leaning too much toward the target, or leaning too much away from the target with an iron or something like that, then you're going to want to work on the compression line course. As far as the straight line release is concerned, right, we want to be releasing that club out in front. If you see that you haven't really released, you're right here, then you're going to want to work on the straight line release course. And then after that, once you're nailing all those pieces, I would say the move would be a good place to go. So it really just depends. It's hard to work on the move and the straight line release if you're not nailing all the pieces that are preceding it. So I would go through them in those orders, get familiar with all those pieces and what those key positions are that I just talked about. And if you do that, then you'll know, okay, well, I need to work on this, or I need to work on this. I need to work on this, as opposed to just kind of skipping over everything that you may need to work on and making it near impossible for you to if you're casting the club from the very beginning of the swing, there's no way you're going to be able to get the move or the straight line release. There's just no way you're going to be able to do it. So you want to make sure that you're nailing those pieces. And if you want help with that, we do offer unlimited swing reviews as an additional service to our All Access members. I don't believe we have spots available right now, but I think we're going to be opening up spots here soon. We do have a new instructor who's going to be opening up several spots. Chris Hunsaker. I think Robin's going to open up a couple spots. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to or not. I do have a full student load right now, so hopefully I will be able to, but we'll be hopefully sometime this month we'll be opening that. So be on the lookout in your email. But if you're interested and you want to go check it out, click that get a review at the top of the swing. And basically the way that it works is you download a free app. You sign up for the service, you download a free app, and then you'll send me a video of your swing face on that from down the line, and we'll talk about your game a little bit, and I'll be able to pinpoint, okay, this is where you need to start, and this is where you need to work through to improve your game. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you go to that swing review page just to see what it's all about, because there is an example swing review on there, but also to sign up for the waiting list. Typically, the way that it works, whenever we open up spots, we'll send out an email to the waiting list first. And if we sell out to that group, then we won't send any more emails. And that's typically what happens is we'll sell out to that group. And I think it's been a few months since I've had to send out an email to everyone. Typically, it sells out to the waiting list. So if you're interested, make sure that you join that waiting list, because there's a good possibility that you may never be notified that swing reviews spots are available because you're not on the waiting list. So make sure you join that waiting list so that way you can get notified when spots become available. All right, got some more questions here. So Tyler T says, since going through the 20 MDF, I find myself hitting balls way too high at times. I used to struggle with opposite issue, too many low balls, and I have my driver on a higher loft. Should I go back to 10.5 after learning 20 MDF? You may need to. So the thing you have to understand, you may not actually be hitting the ball at a higher launch. You may be just be hitting it higher because you're hitting it further. So if you imagine if I hit a shot, let's say I swing a driver at 80 miles per hour, okay? It's going to go, at this launch angle, it's going to go up here, and then it's going to come down. Let's say I gain 15 miles per hour. Now I'm swinging 95. If I hit it at the same launch, it's going to go higher because it's going further, right? So it's going further, it's going higher, and it's coming down. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you may, you may not be hitting it too high. It's just higher than what you're used to. So you can fool around with your loft a little bit and see if taking off some loft gives you more distance in a more playable ball flight. It's just something to mess around with that I would do. Maybe, if you're just out playing a little practice round or something like that, just playing around, bring your little tool with you. If you have an adjustable driver, put it on a low setting, put it on the lowest that it has, and see hit a couple drives, see how it does, and then switch it to the super high setting, right, and hit a few drives and see what it does. You may find that you may like the lower ball flight better, and it goes the same distance, right? Or you may find that you like there's lower ball flight, but you don't get as much distance. The higher ball flight gives you more distance. So you may want to find that happy medium in there. So just play around with it. The only way or if you have access to like a simulator or something like that, TrackMan or something like that, you can get on a machine and do that. But I know most of us don't have access to something like that. So that's why I always recommend doing it. Just go out in the course. And the cool thing about the course is it's a real life situation. Whereas sometimes if you get where you're hitting off a TrackMan in a bay or something like that, it's almost like a science lab environment. It doesn't necessarily always translate out there. So that's why I sometimes recommend that, because it can be better sometimes. It just takes longer to figure out exactly what you want. So it's possible you probably just got more speed and you're just hitting it higher because you're hitting it further. But yeah, just play around with it, see what you find. Also, it may be that you're hitting it high on the face. Understand that these driver faces are bulged, right? So it's like a ball basically on it. So you're the driver, like this is a 9-degree driver. When we say 9 degrees, that's from the center of the club face. The top of the club face can be 12 degrees, 3 degrees more, and the lower part of the club face can be 6 degrees, 3 degrees less. So if you hit it higher on the face, the ball's going to go higher as well. That might be what you're doing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're hitting it a little bit, you don't want to go overboard, but if you're hitting it like a 1/4 inch high on the face, that above the center, that's actually going to be better. That's going to be higher launch. It's going to lower the spin a little bit, which is going to be better for distance. So just some things to think about there. But yeah, you can play around with it. It may be that you're just hitting it further. All right. So Mark K says, I was blocking drive to right. An observation from playing Buddy was my body was out racing my arms. I couldn't really relate because I thought I'd start to flipping the club. I would look at your swing on video to see what's really going on. If your body is out racing your arms, it's typically not going to result in a block. It's typically going to result in a hook because the hands are rolling over, but maybe you're just swinging out to the right. A block is caused by you're swinging too much into out, and your face is in line with the direction that you're swinging. So your face and your path are in that same direction. So if you think about a baseball field, I'm assuming you're right-handed. You're saying you're blocking drives to the right. So basically your club face is pointed toward first base, and you're also swinging this club in the direction of first base. So what we need to do is get that to where it's going toward second base. So right now, here is the reality. Here's the fault, right? So let's do a fault, feel, real here. So right now, the fault is that you're doing this. So into out, with the face in line with the path. That's good to have the face in line with the path. It's just a straight ball out to the right. What we're going to feel is that we're doing this. I would try to feel like you're swinging toward third base, right? Swing toward third base, and then the reel will be that you're swinging more toward second base as you're coming in. So that's what I would try to do. That's probably going to fix the problem right there. If you start hitting pulls to the left, then that's great. That means that you've changed, but now all you have to do is ease off of that. It just means instead of thinking toward third base, you can think toward the shortstop, right? And that will get you to straighten out. So a lot of it's just adjusting your feel to get the desired result. As far as the mechanics and things that are going on with your swing, it's impossible for me to know without seeing it. But just doing that, we have to if we break down what's going on at impact, you can change that intuitively by thinking, okay, we know everything's going toward first base, face and path are toward first base. If we think face and path are toward third base, then that can get that to straighten out. So that's what I'd recommend doing. But if you want help as far as the mechanics are concerned, I'd need to see your swing like through swing reviews or something like that. So Thomas J says, hello, Q. I'm struggling with shallowing my club and squaring the face early in the downswing, especially with the driver. I can do this. The tennis racket is it very slow, but can't seem to do the same with a long, heavier driver. Are there any good drills of squaring the club face? You found it, that tennis racket drill. You probably just haven't done enough reps. Get to where you can do it with a short iron first. Work your way up to a middle iron, longer iron, hybrids, fairway woods, then the driver. It's going to be more difficult with that longer, heavier clubs. So take the time to work on the tennis racket drill. Do the same drill with the shorter clubs. Do it really slow. Exaggerate as much as possible. Build up the speed, and then step your way up from there. You're just not going to be able to go from doing the tennis racket drill. You're just not going to be able to go from doing this really, really slow and then grabbing your driver and just being able to do it really fast. It just doesn't work that way. You have to train your body to do it, right? And that comes from, just like I said earlier, if you're learning anything for the first time, imagine learning a musical instrument, right? You learning the guitar. You're not just going to start playing songs right away. It doesn't work that way. You have to start out really, really slow, figure out the notes, figure out how the fingers work, and you have to build up the speed. So when you're doing anything that happens really fast, the downswing happens in a quarter of a second. You don't have time to think about that, right? So you're going to do what you naturally do right now until you break it down, go really slow, and learn the proper movements. So work on it every day, 15, 30 minutes every single day. Work on that tennis racket drill. Work on it with clubs. Start out really slow. Do really slow reps. Try to make the swing take an entire 10 seconds, right? An entire 10 seconds coming down. Try to make the swing feel like that. Get faster with it. Once you get it in the 10-second swing, then try it in like a 5-second swing, right? Once you get with that, then try it in a 3-second swing. Just try to go faster and faster and faster with it until you're able to do. Because once you do that, you're building the neural pathways. You realize, okay, well, this is how my body should be working, and then you're able to do it faster and faster as you get more and more comfortable with it. That's the time that it takes. It's not. I wish it worked out that where you can just go out, you can work on the tennis racket drill for a half hour, and then boom, you're going to be nailing it. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way typically. The only way it works that way is if it's a position that you're basically, it's a motion that you're already comfortable with, and really your body just needed to be reminded of that. That happens sometimes. I get students sometimes that boom, I'll give them the drill and they're nailing it already in their swing. It happens sometimes, but it's basically only because it's something that they used to do, and it's just that they went off and tried to do something else that was not beneficial for them, and they just need to be reminded of the proper way to move. So yeah, just take some time. You probably just need to get in more repetitions with it. All right. So Mark B says, this lockdown is killing me. I think keeping the ball in play is more important than distance. If you agree, what part of the course should I work on in anticipation of the courses opening up? I agree and I don't agree. There's a happy medium there, right? So we don't want to be swinging so out of control that you're not able to, you're hitting the ball way in the woods every single time. Obviously, that's not good. But being in the rough is completely fine, right? You're going to be just fine. I'd much rather be 100 yards out in the rough than be 150 yards out in the middle of the fairway. You're just going to score a lot better if you do that. So you have to find that happy medium when you do that. So and the other thing is that people think that if you swing nice and easy, you're going to be deadly accurate. And that's just not the reality of what the way that it works. Typically, you're going to be just as inaccurate from swinging really, really slow and nice and easy as you are if you're swinging athletically and getting the ball out there. So you guys got to find that happy medium that works the best for you. Basically swing aggressively and with some good amount of speed. You're playing speed, right? And see what's going on, what's wrong, what's the big miss, what's going on there, what's the issue, and then try to fix that issue. So let's say you're swinging hard and it's a big slice, right? You're swinging aggressively and you hit a big old slice. Well, then I would swing aggressively and try to swing in to out with a closed face, right? I would try to hit big old snap hooks when you're swinging aggressively. So that's what I'd recommend doing. But yeah, typically what you're going to find is that it's just tougher to play when you're hitting the ball really, really short. So you got to find that happy medium. So I do agree that keeping the ball in play is important, but I don't agree that it's above all else. You got to find that happy medium. So Richard S. says, what is the main factor that determines ball flight? It is the swing path or face angle. So the face is going to determine where the ball starts mostly. So the ball is going to start in about 75 to 85% in the direction of the face, depending on the club. So 75% to 85% in the direction of the face. So, and then it's going to curve away from your club path. Most people don't have a problem so much of squaring up the face. Most people, the problem is more the path. Most people are able to get that face coming into contact relatively square. So I don't find that that's usually a major issue. But hey, if you are coming into contact and you're having trouble keep getting that club face square, and the ball starting way left or way right, then the face is definitely an issue, right? And that's the face is king as far as that is concerned. The ball is going to curve away from your club path, right? So basically, your path is mostly the relationship of your face and your path is going to determine mostly of the curvature on the ball. So I'd say in order, if you're having trouble with the face is king. So the face is number one, but most people aren't having trouble that much with the face. If the ball is not starting straight, then there is a trouble with the face. It could also be strike. Strike is also super important. So you have to understand, if you hit the ball in the heel, the face twists, all right? And the face will become more closed. So the ball will, if you're right-handed, the ball will start a little bit more left than it normally would, and then it will tend to curve to the right due to something called gear effect. And if you hit it on the toe, the face will twist open. The ball will start a little bit more to the right than it normally would, and then it will typically curve to the left. It will typically draw. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll get so far off the face and the twist, or so far off the toe, the face will twist open so much that the ball will just go straight right. There's no amount of gear effect that will make that ball come back. So strike is also very, very important. So basically, there's the big four. You have your face angle, which is the direction the club face is pointing. That's the direction mostly where the golf ball is going to start. You have your club path, which is the direction the club head is moving through contact. That's typically in relationship to the face. That's going to determine most of the curvature on the shot. So if you're swinging really into out and your face is square, then you're typically going to hit a big old draw, right, or a hook. If you're swinging out to in and your face is square to the target, you're typically going to hit a slice, right? So that's typically where that relationship of the face and the path is what's going to determine most of the curvature on the ball. Then you have your strike location. If you hit it on the heel, it's going to tend to start more to the left and curve to the right. If you hit it on the toe, it's going to tend to start more to the right and curve to the left. You can hit the ball with a slice swing, hit the ball on the toe, and it can go dead straight. It won't go very far because you cut across it and you also mishit it on the toe, so you won't be transferring as much energy to the golf ball, but it can give you that false illusion that you're hitting a great shot because it goes straight. Just like you can hit a ball with a hook swing, hit it in the heel, and it'll go straight as well. But the reality is that you didn't hit a very good shot. If you're hitting those shots that are going straight and aren't going very far, that's most likely what's going on. Your two wrongs are making a playable shot, but just not going to go very far. And then the other one is basically your ground contact. So how the club is coming down and interacting with the ground. Is that before the golf ball? Is that after the golf ball? Are you hitting the ground at all? Are you just picking it clean? That's also a determining factor of how well you hit the ball. So strike location is very, very important. They're all very, very important. If you're not nailing all of those, you're not going to hit a good shot, right? So if just one of those is wrong, if you hit behind the ground behind the golf ball, you're not going to hit a good shot. If you hit it way out in the toe, you're more than likely not going to hit a good shot. So I'd be looking at those four pieces and where you come in with those four pieces. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some people, it's the path is the big issue. Some people, it's strike location is the big issue. So some people, there's going to be multiple pieces. It may be all four of them that are big issues, and you need to work on all four of them. So that's what I'd be looking at. There's not one that's necessarily more important than the other. The most important one is the one that you're struggling with the most. So Donald L says, working on stable foot is fine, but seem to dip my right shoulder too far right. So the right shoulder is going to go down in the downswing. If you look at tour players, they're like this at impact. That right shoulder is lower. So it's probably not that your right shoulder is going too low. It's probably that you're just punching at the golf ball. You're coming in and you're pushing this trail arm because that's what you're used to doing. You may be used to coming into contact more like this, where you have to punch your arm. Well, if I get my right shoulder lower and I also do that, I'm just going to throw that club into the ground behind the golf ball. So we need to have this bent arm as we're coming in to contact. So I'd just be working on coming down and feeling like this lead arm is more into the body as you're coming in. And that's what I'd be looking at in your swing. It's probably your right shoulder that's really too low. It's probably that you're just pushing through with that trail arm. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire the answers here because we are after 10. So Donald B says, I'm working to stop standing up in the swing, trying to stay off the toes and trail foot. Seemed to like a loss of power, but I suspect it could be. It's not. Could you comment on describe benefits of keeping a spine angle? Yeah. So if you're standing up, and you have early extension through contact, you're just kind of throwing your arms at it. So you're not creating any momentum with your lower body, and you're also losing loft because you're throwing your arms at it. You're losing loft. You're flipping through contact. So you may want to work on the move to get that club shallowed out, and so that you can square the face earlier and stay in your posture. Mark C says, I'm 59 years old. I have a good turn and lag, but still can't generate much club head speed. Is it an age thing? I see people with age all the time and improve their club head speed. I'd be working through the 20-minute distance fix. You may have a good turn, but you may be able to get a better turn. You may have good lag, but you may be able to do better. It could be other pieces that are going on. You may be able to generate that lag, but you're just not releasing it very well. You're not using that stored up energy that you have. So I work through the 20-minute distance fix and work through those pieces in there to get you more speed. But average club head speed for someone who's around 60, I believe, is going to be 88 to 90, somewhere in there for your average amateur. Your average really good golfer is going to be about, I think tour players are somewhere around 103 miles per hour. Your Champions Tour players are around 60 years old. That's the average, I'd say. So something to shoot for if you're not quite there. If you're already at 103 miles per hour, you're doing pretty darn good. If you're over 100 at 59 years old. So Terry G says, how much weight have you lost and how? I probably, depends on when I started, but since this year, it's about 45 pounds since the start of the year. Just not eating as much and eating plenty of protein and moving more. So working out, stuff like that. It's really all about energy balance. Eat less, burn more calories than you eat. It's really as simple as it is. If you want a good book to read on all this stuff, I would recommend. It's called Bigger, Leaner, Stronger by Mike Matthews. Check it out. It's a great read. It's kind of long, but it's a great read if you want to. It's kind of a no BS book, and it's really all you really need as far as getting healthier and losing weight and working out and good stuff. So last question here. So Adrian T says, I've always been very good with the driver, fairway woods, or hybrids, but the most part a substandard iron player. For 4 years now, I've tried various TPG swing videos, but can't quite get the lag and club face impact spot I get with the woods. Do you have a general comment then when you hear of this? You're probably, I would look at your ball position, because a lot of times with those clubs, that ball position's too far forward. I look at your compression line. You may be coming in. I just look at your swing and look at the pieces that are going on. So typically for an iron, you're going to be a little bit more vertical with that compression line. Your spine angles are going to be a little bit more vertical. With a driver, you can kind of get away with a flip because that ground's not in the way, right? We can kind of get away with the flip and hit up into the golf ball. But with an iron, that ground's in the way, and we can't do that. So the move course is probably going to be the best thing for you, I would imagine. It's hard to say without seeing your swing. But like I said, we do offer Element swing reviews. If you're interested, make sure you join that waiting list. If you'd like me to take a look at your swing, or any of our other instructors take a look at your swing. But yeah, that's going to help you. The move's probably going to be your best bet if I had to guess. So I look at that. That's going to be about getting that club to shallow out and then turning into impact and getting that shaft leaning forward. Typically, people who struggle with irons are really struggling with that impact because their shaft is straight up and down. They're coming into contact and they're flipping. So when you do that, it's just hard to be a good iron player. You're not going to get a lot of compression. You're going to hit a lot of thin shots. You're going to hit a lot of chunks. You're going to hit the ball fairly high, not a lot of compression. What we want to be doing is we want to be coming in and getting that good forward shaft lean, hitting down and through the golf ball. That's going to help you to de-loft the face, transfer more energy to the golf ball. That's going to help you get that strike higher on the face, because if you have the club like this and then you lean it forward, you'll see how that strike location goes higher on the face, which more in the middle of the face instead of really low on the face, which is going to help you to hit the ball more solid as well. So the move course, straight line release course is probably going to be the course that you need to work on, but it's hard to say without seeing your swing. So best of luck, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.